It was a Thursday when I realized something inside our house had gone rotten, but it wasn't a gut feeling or some silent alarm. It was right in my face, loud, colorful, impossible to ignore. I'd just gotten off a plane, 2 hours early, thanks to a storm rerouting flights, and instead of calling ahead like I normally would, I decided to surprise her. There was this stupid, almost childish excitement sitting in my chest. I bought flowers from one of those overpriced airport stands, bright yellow ones because she once said yellow was a color that made her feel wild and alive. It sounds ridiculous now, like trying to throw water on a burning house with a plastic cup. The Uber driver barely said a word the whole way back. Good. I was too busy imagining how she'd jump into my arms, how the kids would come racing down the stairs, how for once everything would be simple. But when I got to the house, something strange hit me. Not silence, not emptiness, but music. Not the kind we played around the house. No, this was thumping, pulsing nightclub music, way too loud for the kids to be asleep upstairs. And there were lights too, flashing in the living room window like somebody had set up a cheap disco. I pushed the door open and the smell hit me first, cologne that wasn't mine, sweat, something sugary and thick like a candle burning too long. And there she was. Not standing there embarrassed. Not scrambling to hide something. No, she was dancing. Right there, in the middle of the living room, barefoot on the rug I picked out last Christmas, wearing a black dress so short it could have passed for a scarf. Her arms were thrown over some guy's shoulders, a stranger, tall, clean-shaven, wearing a leather jacket inside my damn house. They didn't even notice me. I stood there, invisible, a ghost in my own life, flowers in one hand, suitcase in the other. I could have screamed, kicked over the coffee table, thrown the vase sitting on the mantel. But the moment froze me solid. It was like my brain couldn't register the file it was trying to open. Finally, she caught sight of me. She didn't gasp. She didn't look guilty. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she rolled her goddamn eyes, and let out a heavy, annoyed sigh like I was a kid interrupting her during a phone call. "Oh," she said, voice flat. "You're early." The guy she was draped all over didn't move an inch. Didn't even look guilty. He just leaned closer to her ear and muttered something that made her laugh, a sharp, cutting sound that felt like it was peeling my skin off one strip at a time. I dropped the flowers. They hit the floor without a sound, petals scattering across the tiles. And still, she didn't even bother stepping away from him. I asked one question. Only one. "Who the hell is he?" She shrugged like she was too bored to explain. "A friend." I wanted to scream, to grab him by the collar and throw him out of the house. But she stared at me, daring me like she wanted a fight. Like she thought I was too weak to do anything about it. "You should have called," she said lazily, twirling a piece of her hair around her finger. "Maybe I could have cleaned up a little." The guy finally spoke then, slurring a little. "Relax, man. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal." I felt the world tilt under my feet. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't even pretend to be sorry. Instead, she walked over to the front door, brushing past me like I was nothing but a piece of furniture, and held it open with one hand, staring at me with this bored, cold smile. "If you're gonna stand there sulking," she said, "at least get out of the way." The man, still grinning, still cocky, grabbed his jacket, brushed past me like he owned the place, and headed into the night. She didn't even watch him leave. She was too busy unlocking her phone, scrolling through messages like I didn't even exist. I just stood there, frozen, watching the life I thought we had burning down to ashes right in front of me. And in that exact moment, something inside me, something soft and trusting, turned to steel. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just picked up my suitcase, walked upstairs, and started planning my disappearance. Because if she could erase me from her heart this easily, I could erase myself from her world even faster. I didn't sleep that night. Not a minute. I sat on the edge of the bed we used to share, staring at the half-open closet where her clothes hung, where her shoes were scattered like she owned the ground she walked on. I stared at the photos on the dresser, her fake smile at family dinners, her arms wrapped around me at New Year's parties, all of it suddenly looking like props from a play where I had been the only fool who thought it was real. Every few minutes I'd hear her downstairs. Laughing. Talking on the phone. No apologies. No fear of consequences. Just a woman who knew she had crushed me and didn't care. That's when I realized she had been planning this. Not the affair, no, that was just the surface. She had been building a life without me inside my life, inch by inch, while I was too blind to see it. She wasn't just cheating. She was replacing me. By morning, my mind was clear. I wasn't going to fight her. I wasn't going to scream, beg, or ask why. I was going to disappear so completely that she would choke on the silence I left behind. The plan snapped into place faster than I would have thought possible. I had a backup bank account she didn't know about, one I'd opened years ago when I thought about starting a small business that never took off. It still had enough in it to last me a while if I was smart. Next, I grabbed all the important documents, passport, social security card, birth certificate, and packed them into a plain black backpack. I didn't take clothes. I didn't take anything sentimental. No notes. No goodbye. I would be gone before she even realized I was serious. But there was one more thing to do before I left. At around noon, when she was finally passed out on the couch downstairs, phone still clutched in her hand, I snuck into her phone using the password she thought I didn't know. It took me 3 tries, her old birthday, our anniversary, and finally the name of some dumb TV character she was obsessed with. The moment it unlocked, my stomach twisted into something ugly and raw. Messages. Hundreds of them. Not just to the guy from last night, though there were plenty of those, but to others. Men I'd never seen. Men she joked with, flirted with, sent photos to. Things she said, things she promised them. Things that made my chest feel like it was being sawed open without anesthesia. And worst of all, messages about me. Laughing at me. Mocking the way I trusted her. Bragging about how easy it was to play the innocent wife while I was out working my little heart out. I stood there for a long moment, letting the betrayal soak so deep it felt like it would stain my bones. Then I set her phone down, quietly, without smashing it like I wanted to, and walked out of the room. 1 hour later, I left the house. No note. No confrontation. No closure. Just a man walking away from the wreckage with nothing but a backpack and a heart full of broken glass. As the door swung shut behind me, I didn't look back. I didn't even lock it. Let her think I was coming back. Let her sit there, smug and satisfied, thinking she had won. Because she hadn't even begun to lose yet, the first thing I did after stepping out of the house was ditch my phone. Not just turn it off, ditch it. I threw it into the river that ran a few miles outside of town, watching it sink beneath the dirty surface without a ripple. That phone had been a leash for years, a GPS beacon tying me to a life that didn't exist anymore. It deserved to drown. Next came the car. I didn't drive it home, that would have been too easy to trace. Instead, I parked it 3 towns over in the back lot of a rundown diner, left the keys on the driver's seat, and walked away without glancing back. The backpack was light on my shoulders, but somehow I felt heavier with every step, like every footfall was tearing loose a part of the man I used to be. I caught a bus heading east. Paid cash. Kept my head down. No calls, no emails, no social media updates. I was shedding my old skin, piece by piece, and by the time I crossed into the next state, there was nothing left for her to find. But the real brilliance wasn't just in leaving. It was in how I left. She was the kind of woman who needed to win. Needed to see the destruction she caused. Needed tears, rage, accusations to fuel her ego. She needed me to fight for her so she could roll her eyes and tell her new plaything how pathetic I was. Instead, I gave her nothing. And it drove her insane. The first time she called, I wasn't there to answer. The second time, she left a voicemail. Casual. Fake. Chirping. Hey, where are you? Did you go for a walk or something? Call me. By the 5th message, the sweetness was gone. Replaced with sharpness. Like rusted nails scraping across metal. Pick up the damn phone, Jake. Seriously. Where are you? And by the 10th, it was pure venom. If you think you can just disappear and leave me to clean up your mess, think again. You're acting like a child. I listened to them all later, just once, just to savor how the panic built in her voice with every missed call, every unanswered text. Meanwhile, I was building a new life. Small town, off the map, cheap apartment under a fake name. Paid in cash. Picked up odd jobs that didn't ask questions. Hauling lumber, cleaning out abandoned houses, repairing fences. Hard, ugly work that left my hands cracked and my muscles aching. But it was real, honest. No lies, no rotten smiles hiding poison. And for the first time in years, I slept. Really slept. Deep, dreamless sleep where her voice couldn't follow me. But Amanda, she didn't let go easily. The emails started next. First the fake sweetness, come home. Let's talk. I miss you. Then the threats, if you don't come back, you'll regret it. She even posted online, vague, whining posts about how her poor husband had abandoned his family, how she didn't know what had gone wrong, how she was the victim. Every word a lie. Every post another brick in the wall between us. And I stayed silent. I never responded. Not once. Not even when she threatened to find me. Not even when she said the kids were asking questions, which, for all I knew, was another lie. It didn't matter anymore. The woman I married was dead long before I ever walked out that door. She just hadn't had the decency to tell me. Still, I knew it wouldn't end there. People like her, they don't just move on. They need a final act. A victory parade. And Amanda? She was planning something. I could feel it coming. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. It didn't take long for Amanda to escalate. Silence wasn't something she could handle. She thrived on reactions, explosions, chaos she could twist and manipulate until she looked like the innocent one. Without someone feeding her drama, she started to unravel in real time, and the first crack in her armor was easy to see, even from a distance. I caught wind of it through an old friend, Kyle, who still lived back in our hometown. He didn't know where I had gone, nobody did. But he knew enough to send a few words my way through a burner email we used for fantasy football back in college. It was a simple message. You need to know what she's doing. She's telling everyone you cheated on her. She's showing fake texts. She's gone off the rails. Fake texts. The words made my pulse throb in my temples. Not content with simply dancing on the grave of our marriage, she was now painting herself as the victim, as the sainted wife who had been left by a cruel, cheating husband. And it worked. God, it worked. Old friends started cutting me off. Family members, the ones who had never really known me, sent cold, clipped messages about disappointment and how could you? Without bothering to ask my side. I had underestimated her. She wasn't just going to replace me. She was going to erase me. And for a brief, terrible moment, I almost went back. Almost packed my few things, caught a bus, walked through that door, and demanded to know why she was poisoning my name to anyone who would listen. But then I realized something sharper, colder, far more useful than anger. Amanda was doing all of this because she was scared. Because despite all the lies, all the cheating, all the staged betrayals, she couldn't stand the fact that I had left her first. And that fear made her reckless. I didn't need to defend myself. I didn't need to show up at her door screaming. All I needed to do was wait. And it didn't take long. Less than 2 weeks after Kyle's warning, Amanda slipped. She got too comfortable in her lies, too sloppy with her stories. One night, half drunk at a local bar, she let it slip to a mutual acquaintance that she had forged the messages, faked the cheating story, built the entire narrative from scratch. She laughed about it loud enough for witnesses to hear. Boasted about how she had to do something to stay in control of the story, otherwise people might start asking what she had been doing while I was slaving away in some office. The word spread like wildfire. Small towns have long memories and even longer tongues. The story flipped almost overnight. Suddenly people weren't so sure about Amanda's version of events. The friends she had manipulated started peeling away one by one. The sympathy she bathed in started to dry up. The walls she built to protect her lies started crumbling brick by bitter brick. And I stayed silent. Still invisible. Still gone. But watching. When she finally tried to reach me again, it wasn't anger this time. It was desperation. A message dumped into the old fantasy football email like a dead fish, please. Just come back. We can fix this. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I considered answering, that bridge was already ashes, but because it was the first real, raw, honest thing she'd said in years. She was scared now. And she should be. Because I wasn't just gone. I was about to become the ghost she could never stop seeing, never stop feeling, never explain away. Her greatest failure. Her permanent regret. And she still had no idea how deep the cut was going to go. The message stayed unopened in the inbox. Not because I didn't see it, but because answering it would have been giving her what she wanted, a reaction. An acknowledgement that she still had a piece of me trapped somewhere under her thumb. That was Amanda's real addiction, not men, not power, not even attention. It was control. And she had lost it. Completely. While she spiraled back home, I was laying the final stones of my plan. I wasn't just going to vanish. I wasn't going to let her reframe my absence into some sad little story about a poor, misunderstood woman abandoned by her cruel husband. No, Amanda was going to be exposed. And she was going to expose herself with her own greedy hands. The opportunity came faster than I expected. There was an insurance policy, something she had forgotten about. A life insurance plan I took out years ago when our second kid was born, meant to protect them if anything ever happened to me. I had paid into it for years without thinking twice, just one more piece of the future I thought we were building. And Amanda? She filed a claim. On a man who wasn't dead. Filed it within a month of my disappearance, actually. And not quietly. Sloppily. Desperately. She told the company I had been missing long enough to be declared dead. She forged signatures. Submitted fake police reports. Swore up and down that there had been an investigation, that the authorities had given up. All lies. All traceable. The first time I heard about it was from an investigator who called the last number associated with my name an old work phone that had been rerouted to voicemail. They left a message explaining the situation in clipped, professional tones. Amanda hadn't just crossed a moral line. She had crossed a legal one. It was better than anything I could have engineered myself. She wasn't just reckless now, she was criminally stupid. She was so desperate to cash out and wipe me from existence that she left a paper trail a mile wide. And I hadn't lifted a single finger. I sat in my tiny, grimy apartment listening to the voicemail again and again, feeling a kind of cold satisfaction that didn't feel anything like revenge. It felt like justice. Real justice. The kind nobody could argue or spin or Photoshop into something prettier. I spent a few more days watching from the shadows, careful, methodical. Made sure the investigators were following through. Made sure Amanda kept digging her own grave with every arrogant, careless move. And then, one rainy afternoon, sitting in a diner 2 towns over, sipping the worst coffee I'd ever tasted, I made the final call. Not to her. To the authorities. Gave them my statement. Sent them the evidence I had, copies of her emails, screenshots of the messages bragging about forging documents, timelines that didn't add up, things only I could have known to look for. I kept my voice calm. Clear. Detached. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I told them yes. Not because I hated her. Not even because of what she did to me. But because it was time someone stopped her. Because if she could do this to me, someone who loved her once, what would she do to the next fool who didn't see her coming? As I ended the call, I realized I wasn't shaking. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. Really, truly free. And Amanda? She was about to find out what happens when you set fire to the only bridges sturdy enough to hold you up. And then pretend you're surprised when you fall. The day Amanda's world began to cave in was a quiet one. No fireworks, no screaming headlines, no dramatic car chases. Just a knock on her door, a simple, crisp knock from 2 plain-dressed investigators holding papers she couldn't talk her way out of. I wasn't there to see it. But I didn't need to be. Cal sent me the play-by-play later that night in a single, brutal message. She cracked. Cried. Screamed. Said you set her up. She's finished. The irony hit me so hard I laughed for the first time in months. A real laugh, harsh and scraping at the edges of my throat like it had forgotten how to work. Amanda, the master puppeteer, finally caught in her own tangled strings. From what I pieced together, the investigators didn't give her time to spin her usual stories. They came armed, timelines, phone records, emails, witnesses. They laid it all out, cold and clinical. Every step she had taken to try to erase me from existence and cash out on my disappearance. At first, she denied everything. Of course she did. That was Amanda's first move. Deny, 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 until reality bent around her version of the truth. But reality didn't bend this time. Reality slapped her across the face with evidence she couldn't explain. She tried shifting blame. Claimed it was a mistake, a misunderstanding, that she genuinely thought I had left for good and wasn't coming back. She even pulled out the crocodile tears, the same ones she had used to sucker punch me into forgiving 1,000 tiny betrayals over the years. But investigators don't care about tears. They care about signatures, dates, facts, and the facts buried her. Charges were filed: fraud, forgery, attempted insurance fraud. Serious charges. Heavy ones. Ones you don't just shrug off with a sorry and a wink. The news traveled faster than fire through our town. The same people who had once pitied her, comforted her, gossiped in her favor, now crossed the street when they saw her coming. They weren't angry at what she'd done to me. Most of them barely cared about that part. They were angry at how easily she had lied to them, used them, made fools out of everyone. Amanda, queen of manipulation, reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale. I imagined her standing there, phone in hand, desperately scrolling through contacts she thought were loyal, only to find silence at the other end. Imagined her pacing in circles, calling and calling and calling, and getting nothing but voicemails and cold, empty echoes. And me? I stayed gone. Didn't poke the wound. Didn't send a single message to gloat. I let the silence speak for me, louder and sharper than anything I could have said. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about survival. About proving to myself that I could walk through the fire she lit and come out the other side, burned, yes, but not broken. Amanda didn't go to jail immediately. The legal system moves slower than you want it to when you're angry. But the process had started. The lawsuits, the investigations, the reputation rot, all things she couldn't charm or flirt her way out of. Her fall was long, and it was brutal. The best part? She had done it to herself. Every lie, every fake smile, every cruel little betrayal, it all added up, brick by brick, until she built herself a coffin and nailed it shut with her own hands. And through it all, I stayed silent. Watching. Waiting. Building a new life from the ashes she thought would bury me. She thought she could destroy me. But all she did was set me free. You would think after everything, the lies, the fake police reports, the insurance fraud, Amanda would finally understand that the game was over. But people like her don't quit. They don't surrender. They claw and scratch and scheme right up until the moment the door slams shut for good. And Amanda? She had one last card to play. I found out through Kyle again, who seemed half amused and half disgusted when he called from a blocked number late one night. "You're not gonna believe this," he said, voice low. "She's telling people she's pregnant." The words hit me like a slap. Pregnant. That wasn't just desperate. That was nuclear. She wasn't content letting her lies rot out quietly. No, she had to light them up like fireworks. Spin a new narrative. Poor Amanda, abandoned while carrying the child of a husband who cruelly disappeared. She was trying to wrench sympathy back out of the ashes, rebuild the facade. And this time, she wasn't just throwing fake texts or sad looks at people. She was creating a whole fictional life. I didn't respond right away. I just sat there on the edge of the battered mattress in my no-name apartment, staring at the cracked paint on the walls, feeling this strange coldness settle in my gut. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even hurt. It was a tired kind of pity. She was digging the hole deeper, still thinking there was a way to climb out the other side. But this wasn't a hole anymore. It was a grave, and she had just started shoveling faster. Within days, the rumors exploded. She was seen touching her stomach dramatically at the grocery store, crying over coffee with concerned friends, telling anyone who would listen how terrified she was to be raising a baby alone after being so heartlessly abandoned. But she forgot one crucial thing. Pregnancies are real. They can be tested, proven. And in her haste to weaponize sympathy, Amanda didn't think long-term. She didn't think about the questions that would inevitably come. The appointments, the due dates, the missing evidence. She couldn't fake an entire human being into existence no matter how good she thought she was. People started doubting. The whispers grew louder. People started looking closer at the timeline. Started remembering how many nights she'd been spotted at bars, laughing and drinking, long after I had disappeared. The cracks in her story became canyons. And then came the final blow, a doctor's office receptionist, someone who remembered seeing Amanda storming out cursing a few weeks earlier when her pregnancy test had come back negative. Small-town memories. Sharp ones. It all unraveled in days, not weeks. The final betrayal wasn't even to me, it was to the people who had still, somehow, believed in her. They turned their backs for good. Amanda wasn't just a woman who had made mistakes anymore. She was a liar, a fraud, a master manipulator caught red-handed, still trying to spin fairy tales out of ash and dust. When the last friend left, the last person who might have held her hand or whispered a soft excuse on her behalf, Amanda stood alone. exactly where she had pushed everyone who ever loved her, exactly where she deserved to be. And I was miles away by then, living under a new name, working a simple job, watching the sunset from a hill that nobody in my old life knew existed. Free, really free, not just from her, from the man I used to be, the fool who believed that love could fix someone who didn't want to be saved. Amanda was just a ghost now, one I didn't need to exorcise. She was haunting herself better than I ever could. While Amanda's world kept collapsing under the weight of her own lies, my new life was growing, quietly, stubbornly, in the shadow of everything she tried to destroy. I wasn't just hiding. I was building something. And the funny thing was, I hadn't planned it. At first, I was just surviving, drifting from job to job, town to town. Never settling, never trusting, never letting my guard down enough to plant roots. But life has a way of sneaking in when you're not looking. It started with a broken truck engine. I was working at a rundown gas station when a guy rolled in with smoke pouring from under his hood. He was panicking, cursing, ready to abandon the thing right there. I knew a bit about engines, enough to get it running again, and before I realized what was happening, I was being offered a job. Small-town mechanic shop. No background checks. No questions. Just hard work and quiet days and people who judged you by the grease under your nails, not the ghosts in your past. I took it, and slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice, the days stopped feeling so heavy. I started remembering what it felt like to laugh without second-guessing it. To wake up without checking my phone, bracing for some new disaster. To live without a constant knot twisting tighter in my gut. The owners of the shop, an older couple named Frank and Marla, didn't ask where I came from. Didn't care. They saw the exhaustion behind my eyes, the way I flinched when certain subjects came up, and they gave me the only thing I needed. Space. Respect. A clean slate. They didn't know it, but they saved me. I saved every paycheck. Lived cheap. Kept to myself. Built a life so low to the ground it couldn't be knocked over by a hurricane. And in the middle of all the quiet rebuilding, something else happened. Something I never expected. I found land. Or maybe it found me. A few miles outside town, tucked away behind a line of old oaks, was a tiny, broken-down cabin. Roof caved in. Windows shattered. Foundation barely clinging to the earth. It was nothing. A ruin. But to me, it looked like a chance. I bought it for next to nothing from a farmer who was too old to fix it and too stubborn to let it rot. Cash under the table. No paperwork that could trace back to my old name. And for the first time since Amanda poisoned my life, I had something that was mine. Truly mine. I spent my nights and weekends rebuilding it, plank by plank, brick by brick. Hauling supplies in the back of an old pickup. Learning carpentry from YouTube videos and borrowed books. Bleeding into the wood, sweating into the walls. Every nail I drove in was a piece of the past I was burying. Every board I hammered down was another memory laid to rest. By the time the first snow fell, the cabin had a new roof. New walls. New windows. A new life stitched together with scarred hands and stubbornness. And me? I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. Quietly. Freely. And completely beyond the reach of the woman who had once thought she could bend my life to her will. Amanda couldn't find me. Nobody could. I didn't exist in the world she lived in anymore. And that was exactly the way I wanted it. But life has a twisted sense of humor. Because just when I thought the past was finally dead and buried, something happened. Something small. Something stupid. Postcard. No return address. No message. Just a photo on the front. A blurry picture of a river I recognized instantly. The same river where I had thrown my phone all those months ago. Amanda had found a thread. And she was pulling on it. Hard. The postcard sat on my table for hours before I touched it. I didn't need to flip it over to know who had sent it. It stank of Amanda's fingerprints. Reckless, entitled, desperate. The river. The same one where I had tossed my phone, erasing the last easy breadcrumb she could have followed. Somehow, someway, she had traced that night back to this place. I imagined her, storming along the banks like a woman possessed, combing through mud and rocks looking for a ghost that didn't want to be found. And for a second, just a second, fear tried to dig its claws into my chest. Because if she found that river, how long before she found the town? Before she started knocking on doors, flashing that fake smile, asking the right questions? Amanda had always been good at wearing new faces when she needed them. I should have packed up and left that night. Disappeared again. I knew that. But I didn't. I had built this life with my own hands. Bled for it. Breathed life into it. And I wasn't running again. Not this time. So instead of panicking, I watched. I waited. And within a week, she showed up. I spotted her first through the cracked blinds of the gas station where I still picked up shifts. She came strutting down the main road, sunglasses too big for her face, a polished leather jacket that screamed city money in a place where most people lived paycheck to paycheck. She didn't belong here. She stuck out like a neon sign. I watched her stop at the diner. Then the hardware store. Then the post office. Chatting up locals, flashing that rehearsed worried wife look, showing a photo, probably an old one of me before I learned how to hide better than a ghost. The panic on her face when nobody recognized the picture was almost satisfying. Almost. Because I knew Amanda. If charm didn't work, she would escalate. Get pushy. Get messy. Get angry. And angry Amanda was dangerous. By nightfall, word was already spreading. Some strange woman asking too many questions about someone who didn't exist. People were suspicious. People were tight-lipped. Small towns don't like outsiders digging around without a good reason. But Amanda wasn't giving up. The second night, she parked herself at the local bar, nursing a glass of whiskey she barely touched. Waiting, fishing, watching. I made sure I stayed invisible, changed my patterns, took back roads, kept my head down. But it gnawed at me. The thought of her here, circling like a shark that smelled blood. And then, on the third night, it happened. A knock on the door of the cabin. Sharp, heavy, impatient. I didn't answer, didn't move, didn't breathe. The knock came again. And then her voice, soft, sweet, fake as hell, floated through the wood. I know you're in there. You can't hide from me forever. The sound of it scraped down my spine like knives. I could have stayed silent, waited her out, but something inside me snapped. Not rage, not fear. Finality. I opened the door. There she stood, same smug tilt to her chin, same cold calculation in her eyes. But something was different too. She looked brittle. Like all the battles she fought to control the narrative had worn her down to paper-thin edges. Jake, she said, smiling like nothing had ever happened, like we were still husband and wife playing house. I didn't smile back, didn't invite her in. Just stood there, filling the doorway, making sure she understood this wasn't her house, her life, her story anymore. What do you want? I asked, voice dead. Her eyes flickered, realizing for the first time that whatever piece of me she thought she still owned, it was gone. Gone for good. I just want to talk, she said quickly, sliding into that familiar pleading tone she used whenever she wanted something she hadn't earned. But this time, it didn't land. You should leave, I said, calm as death. She blinked, thrown off by the finality in my voice. You owe me a conversation, she hissed, cracks finally showing through the polished act. After everything we've been through, I don't owe you anything. The words hit her like a slap. Her mouth snapped shut. Her hands clenched into fists so tight her knuckles went white. You think you can just erase me? She whispered, voice shaking with rage. After everything I did for you? Everything I sacrificed? I almost laughed then. Sacrificed? Amanda hadn't sacrificed a damn thing. She had devoured, consumed, taken and taken and taken until there was nothing left but the skeleton of a man who thought love could fix someone so broken they enjoyed the destruction. I took a step closer, lowered my voice. You already erased yourself. And with that I closed the door. Right in her face. No yelling. No crying. No begging. Just the final sound of wood and steel shutting her out of my life forever. I leaned my forehead against the door, breathing steady, feeling the old life slough off me like dead skin. Outside, I heard her scream, high, sharp, ugly, pounding a fist against the door before finally storming off into the night. But I didn't follow. I didn't open the door again. Because for the first time, I finally understood. She wasn't my burden anymore. She was her own. And she would have to live with that. Alone. I never saw Amanda again after that night. No more postcards. No more knocks on the door. No more desperate messages clawing at the edge of my life. It was like she finally realized what I had known for months, that whatever grip she thought she had on me had slipped through her fingers, crumbling into dust. And the best part? The world didn't end. The sun rose the next morning like it always did, painting the hills in soft, brutal gold. The air smelled like rain and earth, clean and heavy. I sat on the porch of the cabin with a cup of cheap black coffee in my hands, watching the steam curl into the freezing dawn, feeling a peace I hadn't touched in years. It wasn't some grand cinematic moment. It was quieter than that, stronger. It was knowing that the war was over, and I had survived. A few weeks later, I got confirmation from Kyle that Amanda had packed up and left town. Disgraced. Alone. No friends left to spin her web for. No money from the insurance fraud she had stupidly tried to pull. No sympathy left to harvest from a town that finally saw her for who she really was. She disappeared into whatever hole she could find, like a snake burrowing into cold dirt. I didn't ask where she went. I didn't care. She was just a bad chapter now. A closed door in a house I no longer lived in. People sometimes talk about healing like it's some grand, beautiful journey, music swelling, magical epiphanies, smiling through tears. It's not. It's brutal. It's slow. It's waking up in the middle of the night gasping for air and forcing yourself to believe that it's over, that you're safe. It's building new memories so dense and real that eventually the old ones have nowhere left to live. It's choosing every single day to stay gone. And it's learning that the people who tear you apart, the ones who lie and cheat and poison everything they touch, they don't get the final word unless you hand it to them. I never handed Amanda anything again. Not my time. Not my anger. Not even my hatred. She had taken enough. I wasn't angry anymore when I thought about her. I wasn't even sad. I was something far more powerful. Indifferent. Amanda could spin her lies in 1,000 different towns, with 1,000 different faces, but it would never matter again, because I had disappeared from her world, and I had built a new one she could never reach. A stronger one, quieter one, a life without her in it. And in that silence, in that stillness, I found something she would spend the rest of her life chasing and never catch. Peace. When I found out about my wife's affair, I vanished without a trace and left her with nothing. Years later, someone uncovered where I had gone, and the truth was simply unbelievable. I hadn't disappeared into darkness. I had disappeared into freedom, into a life she couldn't even imagine. And I wasn't coming back. Not for her. Not for anyone who ever thought I couldn't survive without their poison. The final lesson? Sometimes the greatest revenge is no revenge at all. It's living so well that the people who tried to destroy you can only haunt the empty spaces they created for themselves. And never you again.